A long while ago, perhaps as much as 2,000 years, there was a rich man who had a wife of whom he was very fond, but they had no children. Now in the garden before the house where they lived, there stood a juniper tree, and one winter's day, as the lady was standing under the juniper tree, paring an apple, she cut her finger, and the drops of blood trickled down upon the snow. "Ah," said she, sighing deeply and looking down upon the blood, "how happy should I be if I had a little child as white as snow and as red as blood." Not long after this, a pretty little child was born. It was, as the lady wished, as red as blood and as white as snow, and as soon as she had looked upon it, her joy overcame her, and she fainted away and died. Then her husband buried her under the juniper tree, and wept and mourned over her. But after a little while he grew better, and at length dried up his tears, and married another wife. Time passed on, and he had a daughter born, but the child of his first wife, that was as red as blood and as white as snow, was a little boy. The mother loved her daughter very much, but hated the little boy, and bethought herself how much she might get all her husband's money for her own child. Now it happened that once, when the mother was going into her storeroom, the little girl came up to her and said, "Mother, may I have an apple?" "Yes, my dear," she said, and gave her a nice rosy apple out of the chest. Now you must know that this chest had a very thick heavy lid, with a great sharp iron lock upon it. "Mother," said the little girl, "pray give me one for my little brother too." Her mother did not much like this. However, she said, "Yes, my child, when he comes from school, he shall have one too." When the little boy came to the door, this wicked woman said to him with a kind voice, "Come in, my dear, and I will give you an apple." "How kind you are, mother," said the little boy. "I should like to have an apple very much." "Well, come with me then," said she. So she took him into the storeroom and lifted up the cover of the chest, and said, "There, take one out yourself." And then, as the little boy stooped down to reach one of the apples out of the chest, bang! She let the lid fall, so hard that his head fell off amongst the apples. When she found what she had done, she was very much frightened, and did not know how she should get the blame off her shoulders. However, she went into her bedroom and took a white handkerchief out of a drawer, and then fitted the little boy's head upon his neck, and tied the handkerchief round it, so that no one could see what had happened, and seated him on a stool before the door with the apple in his hand. Soon afterwards, Marjorie came into the kitchen to her mother, who was standing by the fire and stirring about some hot water in a pot. "Mother," said Marjorie, "my brother is sitting before the door with an apple in his hand. I asked him to give it to me, but he did not say a word, and looked so pale that I was quite frightened." "Nonsense," said her mother. "Go back again, and if he won't answer you, give him a good box on the ear." Marjorie went back and said, "Brother, give me that apple," but he answered not a word. So she gave him a good box on the ear, and immediately his head fell off. At this, you may be sure she was sadly frightened, and ran screaming out to her mother that she had knocked off her brother's head, and cried as if her heart would break. "Oh, Marjorie," said her mother, "what have you been doing? However, what is done cannot be undone, so we had better put him out of the way, and say nothing to anyone about it. My mother slew her little son. My father thought me lost and gone, but pretty Marjorie pitied me, and laid me under the juniper tree, and now I rove so merrily, as over the hills and dales I fly. Oh, what a fine bird am I!" Now it happened that his father and mother and Marjorie were sitting together at dinner. His father was saying, "How light and cheerful I am," but his mother said, "Oh, I am so heavy and so sad. I feel just as if a great storm was coming on." And Marjorie said nothing, but sat and cried. Just then the bird came flying along and perched upon the top of the house. "Bless me," said the father, "how cheerful I am. I feel as if I was about to see an old friend again." "Alas," said the mother, "I am so sad, and my teeth chatter so, and yet it seems as if my blood was all on fire in my veins." And she tore open her gown to cool herself. And Marjorie sat by herself in a corner, with her plate on her lap before her, and wept so bitterly that she cried her plate quite full of tears. And the bird flew to the top of the juniper tree and sang, "My mother slew her little son." Then the mother held her ears with her hands and shut her eyes close, that she might neither see nor hear, but there was a sound in her ears like a frightful storm, and her eyes burned and glared like lightning. "O wife," said the father, "my father thought me lost and gone. What a beautiful bird that is, and how finely he sings, and his feathers glitter in the sun like so many spangles. but pretty Marjorie pitied me and laid me under the juniper tree. At this, Marjorie lifted up her head and sobbed sadly, and her father said, "I must go out and look at that bird a little nearer." "Oh, don't leave me alone," said his wife. "I feel just as if the house was burning." However, he would go out to look at the bird, and it went on singing. "But now I rove so merrily, as over the hills and dales I fly. Oh, what a fine bird am I!" As soon as the bird had done singing, he let fall the gold chain upon his father's neck, and it fitted so nicely that he went back into the house and said, "Look here, what a beautiful chain the bird has given me. Only see how grand it is." But his wife was so frightened that she fell all along the floor, so that her cap flew off, and she lay as if she were dead. And when the bird began singing again, Marjorie said, "I must go out and see whether the bird has not something to give me." And just as she was going out of the door, the bird let fall the red shoes before her, and when she had put on the shoes, she all at once became quite light and happy, and jumped into the house, and said, "I was so heavy and sad when I went out, and now I'm so happy. See what fine shoes the bird has given me." And then the mother said, "Well, if the world should fall to pieces, I must go out and try whether I shall not be better in the air." And as she was going out, the bird let fall the millstone upon her head, and crushed her to pieces. The father and Marjorie, hearing the noise, ran out, and saw nothing but smoke and fire and flame rising up from the place. And when this was past and gone, there stood the little boy beside them, and he took his father and Marjorie by the hand, and they went into the house and ate their dinner together very happily.